South Australia is a land of wineries, an underground town, weird frog cakes that are far too sweet, and footy. The South Australian National Football League is the oldest football league in the country. It has some interesting venues, so let's check them out. Adelaide Oval, Adelaide Crows Reserves. As you'll see later on, this is a bit of an outlier in this league. Adelaide Oval is the pride of Adelaide. It's the home of footy and cricket in the city, and is by far the largest stadium in the state. It wasn't always the home of footy though. Up until about a decade ago, the AFL clubs played at this now demolished stadium. When they moved in here, it was renovated to become one of my favourite grounds in the world perhaps. I love the way it combines modern architecture with nods to the past, as well as actual remnants of the past. Perhaps most notably this huge manual scoreboard. Alberton Oval, Port Adelaide Magpies. Port Adelaide's reserves don't play at Adelaide Oval like the first team does, because unlike the Adelaide Crows, it's not their traditional home. This is. They've been here since 1880. The ground has a nice mix of open terracing, a quaint old brick-clad grandstand with a gabled roof, and just this bog standard stand that isn't quite as pretty. There's also the Port Adelaide HQ buildings, but they are pretty irrelevant for the spectators. Elizabeth Oval, Central District Bulldogs. Shouldn't that now be called Charles Oval? I don't know, I haven't really followed the royal family since Kim married Kanye. This ground is one of the more simplistic in the league. There's just the one stand with the rest of the field being surrounded by a mix of grass and terracing. Some of that terracing has had benches added. The one and only grandstand does have quite an interesting design. It's set back from the terracing that borders that wing, but is elevated significantly to ensure a good view. Glenelg Oval, Glenelg Tigers. This beautiful little ground is often used as a secondary cricket venue when the Adelaide Oval is not available. There was even a Sheffield Shield final here a few years ago. And yeah, it does have a similar sort of charm as the old Adelaide Oval. Plenty of brickwork, a picket fence, manual scoreboard. Interestingly, this ground wasn't able to install lights until about a decade ago. That was due to the locals being worried about the light pollution. They had to go to court. In the end, the football club won. 6-2, 5-7, 6-4, 6-1. So, now it hosts night football. Hickenbotham Oval, South Adelaide Panthers. By Australian football standards, this stadium is brand new, having opened in the mid-90s. Which means no red bricks, no picket fence, no asbestos, and you just can't replicate that asbestos smell, you know? Speaking of floodlights, there are actually a couple of mobile phone towers on the side of the field, which is not actually that uncommon. What is a little unusual is that they also act as light towers, killing two birds with two towers. A slingshot would have been more efficient. Norwood Oval. They call it Norwood Oval because there's no wood around the oval. It's home to the Norwood Redlegs. This is probably one of the more beautiful grounds in the league, at least when it comes to the architecture. It's mostly traditional architecture, but they've also added some more modern buildings in recent years. This is one of the few grounds in this league that isn't used for cricket in the summer, but for quite some time it was home to the city's baseball team. It has a long baseball history actually. Come to think of it, that probably explains this unusual corner stand. Pretty much every other ground has the largest stand in the centre. Prospect Oval, North Adelaide Roosters. Interestingly, this too has had some recent additions. But unlike the unashamedly modern buildings at Norwood, these guys have tried to replicate the old school look, which I believe is a bit of a no-no when it comes to houses, but I think it looks pretty good in this instance. And in a few years' time, once the materials have aged a bit, you'd be none the wiser. Another aspect that I appreciate is that the team are called the Roosters, and the scoreboard is sponsored by Red Rooster. Richmond Oval, West Adelaide Bloods. Well, this is basically the same as the last one, with the main difference being the additional buildings on the western side of the ground and the higher concrete to grass ratio on the other side. Also, the exterior of the main stand is unique. Okay, maybe they're not the same after all. As I mentioned earlier, Norwood is known for baseball, while this ground regularly hosts another American sport, American football. It's home to the state's biggest gridiron league. Having said that, being the biggest American football league in South Australia is like being the biggest cricket league in Mongolia. Unley Oval. In Victoria, there is the Carlton Blues. In South Australia, they have the Sturt Double Blues. Just when I was beginning to think that no team would have the audacity to use two different types of blue, the people of Unley have surprised me in such a way that has reinstated my trust in humanity and reinvigorated my passion for the colour blue. I mentioned that Glenelg Oval has hosted first-class cricket in the past. Well, this is the only other suburban SANFL ground that has hosted a Sheffield Shield match. The ground has a nice mix of old and new and a nice backdrop of the Adelaide Hills. Presumably. I mean, they are hills and they are in Adelaide. Woodville Oval, Woodville West Torrens Eagles. Although this league does have some very characterful grounds, a lot of them are quite similar. This has the red bricks, the white picket fence, the grass embankments and the terracing that we've seen at most of the other grounds. It is a good combination, to be fair. I suppose the only major aspect that truly sets it apart is the fact that it has the longest ground in the league. Well, not post to post, but fence to fence. It's over 200 metres. And we all know the real metric that determines the quality of a stadium is its length. Those were the SANFL grounds. Time to pick a favourite. Adelaide Oval is too obvious, so let's choose a second favourite. Yeah, why not? Norwood Oval was rather nice. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing, and as always, thanks for watching, have a good one.